Hi guys, I'm Beth, this is Read Remark, and today we're going to talk about Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton. Thank you so much for joining. Today we're going to talk about Ethan Frome, the classic by Edith Wharton. This is a little bit different than what I'm used to doing. It's not going to be a review. This book was written back in 1911 and has gone down in history as a literary classic already, so my review wouldn't really have an impact one way or the other on its standing as a classic. Although I will say it's good, which is a good thing because lots of high schoolers have to read it as part of their curriculum. So lucky you, high schoolers! I'm reading this as part of Robert over at Barter Hoardes Read Along. He has listed a series of books that you can feel free to read along with if you'd like. Give your thoughts, just an informal chat. Seems like a lot of fun, so I'm excited to see what other people's thoughts on this book are as well. My first problem with this book is that I don't quite know how to say it correctly. I was taught Ethan Frome, but I keep hearing people say Frome, so tomato, tomato. All I ask is that you don't judge me too harshly on my inevitable mispronunciations. For a really good rundown of the plot, I suggest that you go check out the Thug Notes video on this very book. He talks about it much more entertainingly and also makes some really good points about the book, so go check that out. I'm going to give you a very quick bare bones version of the book's plot. Beware, there are spoilers here. I figured since this book is older than 100 years old, it wouldn't really be spilling the tea on anything that hasn't been spilled before. So here it is. Basically, in a nutshell, Ethan Frome is a poor farmer living in a town called Starksville or Starkfield or something equally connotative of how stark both the town, his house, and his life are. He's married to a woman named Zeena. She has become embittered and sickly and always complaining, although she's kind of silently stoic and judgmental throughout their relationship. Ethan has become kind of silently, stoically miserable in their relationship. That is, until Maddie, Zeena's cousin, comes to care for her. Maddie is young and pretty and not very good at all at the housework, but Ethan falls promptly in love with her, and that love is requited. They love each other so, but they never really consummate anything. I think the furthest he goes is to kiss her scarf. Maybe they hold hands once or twice. Zeena knows what's up though. She never says it outright, but you can tell she knows what's up. Zeena is no dummy, and she has devised a plot in which Maddie must leave, and she must have a different hired girl come in to care for her and do all the chores because she is so sickly and the doctor has prescribed a no household work cure for her. Now, I think Zeena is probably genius in coming up with this, I tell ya. I would love a no household work cure. I would love to not have to lift another finger because that is what I need to be well again. I think she's onto something. Ethan and Maddie are so starstruck with each other and so crestfallen about Maddie being sent away. Ethan tries to devise many plans in which he can run away with her, but alas, seems to come up with nothing. He's too poor, or Zeena wouldn't be able to handle things on her own without him, or the town would be too judgmental, or there's just a long laundry list in his head that he comes up with of why he can't leave. So Maddie devises a plan. She decides they should sled down the snowy hill right into the tree, killing themselves. Ethan, of course, agrees because he is kind of nice but not all that smart. So they do that, and then of course they don't die. They don't die. They're hurt very badly. In fact, Maddie is paralyzed. And so we flash back to the future time, because this whole story was told in flashback. We flash back to the future, 25 years later, and Ethan is still this stoically unhappy, deeply unhappy man. The house is still shabby. The town is still stark. And he is living with these two embittered, sickly old ladies. One of them is Zeena, who ironically has had to take care of everything in the house since then, because the other woman is a paralyzed Maddie. A lot of people have had the same reaction as I've had with Edith Wharton books, which is, damn you, Edith Wharton, why must you be such a downer? But there are a lot of funny moments to be had in the book as well, such as the no household chores cure that Zeena came up with, or the obsession over the pickle dish and how Maddie made this gourmet dinner for Ethan that he was just so impressed over when really it was just donuts and pickles. And just how stupidly in love they thought that they were, even though they had no reality to base that on. And of course, the moment that things went south, that love dried up right away. So now Ethan is stuck with double the misery that he had before. Now, I talked in my last video on Our Kind of Cruelty about authorial intent. That is the literary term that talks about the author's intent and how much it should matter to the reader when reading the book. Now, in that video, I discussed briefly Roland Barthes and the death of the author. According to him, all the stuff in the world has already been there. Everything in the author's intent is kind of an amalgam of the entire world, and so once the author writes the book, their involvement in the book should die right there, and the only relationship that matters at that point is between the book and the reader. I'm going to talk today about the opposite end of that spectrum, which is psychoanalytic criticism. This was a term coined by Sigmund Freud, in which he says, yes, the author's intent should be tantamount to interpreting the book. You got to take into account the author's gender, socioeconomic status, cultural standing, everything going around them at the time, their geographic location. You got to factor in all these things going on in the author's life and psyche, because it's a very important part of the book, and it's very important to interpreting the meaning behind the book. Now, these are two very opposite ends of the spectrum, and I don't suggest that you pick one and stick there. I suggest that you just pick whatever you want, or pick nothing at all. The reason I bring it up is because while on that previous book I kind of wished the author had inserted less of herself into the book, on this one I feel like with Edith Wharton you need to really take into account her life to understand her books a little bit better, because you can see some common themes going on in both of them. So Edith Wharton was married for a long time unhappily. She married a man in her rich, high society life that matched her rich, high society standards, but she was not happy. He was not happy. In fact, he suffered from Great Depression. They eventually divorced. They both had passionate affairs with other people. And you can kind of see that in her books. Ethan Frome deals very heavily in an unhappily married man and an unhappily married woman. A woman who, even though she's bitter and kind of passive-aggressively vindictive towards Ethan, probably has every right to be unhappy herself, because when you really look at Ethan, is he that much of a catch? Is he really a good husband? No. No. So it's not just a case of Ethan Frome being this poor victim. So you see a lot of unhappy love stories. You also see unfulfilled love stories. Ethan and Maddie, for example, or in the book that she won the Pulitzer Prize for, The Age of Innocence, you see, I think it was Madame Olenska and the main character being passionately in love, but never really getting to have that happy life together. I think a lot of Edith Wharton's books deal with denial of happiness. And then it also deals with socioeconomic class. Now, in Age of Innocence, those people are rich and fabulous, and she gives kind of both an inside look and a critique of that class of people. On the other end, in Ethan Frome, you see this family that's very poor. They just have no money, and so she gives a very in-depth look at what life is like there. On both ends, the main characters seem to be stuck, almost jailed by their economic class. On both ends of the spectrum, you see these men leaning really heavily on this crutch of their economics, holding them back from what they truly want. But I think that it's kind of an excuse. If they really wanted to move forward in one way or the other, they could do it. They could make it happen. They just choose to use that as the ultimate excuse as to why they can't move forward. It's almost as if they would rather be static within their misery. That's kind of another theme that I saw in Edith Wharton's writing is I'm not sure if she has something against men in particular, or if it just happened to be that it's these two men in these two books who They complain, they're perpetually unhappy, they feel like they're stuck in their circumstances, but they're not really willing to do anything about it. So compare and contrast that with Edith Wharton's own life, her own unhappy marriage to a deeply depressed man, and how she probably felt stuck for many years, because indeed it was longer than 2 decades before she finally divorced her husband. So definitely a worthwhile read. A lot of people give this a thumbs down because it's such a downer of a book, and they're not wrong. I agree with them. It is definitely a downer, but it's also very clever with some humorous moments mixed in. Now, people bring a lot of the symbolism up, such as the color red with the blood when they try to kill themselves, or the red of Maddie's scarf, or the red pickle dish, or the pickles themselves. I'm not even going to get into that. You can look further into the symbolism of it as you wish, and also the setting itself and how it plays heavily into the story as well. There's definitely a lot if you want to go deeper into it, or it's kind of clever on its very surface if that's where you want to stay. So thank you again to Robert over at Barter Hoardes for hosting this read along. It was a lot of fun. I can't wait to hear other people's thoughts on this book. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time. Bye.